Hey everybody, and welcome to another Chairman of the Board ranking video. This is where I take a look at the last 5 new to me board games and I rank and review them in order of preference. Now before I get started on today's 5 games, I want to give a shout out to the show's sponsor, Keyenda.co.uk, who are my go-to online retailer, and if you use the link in the show notes or the QR code, then you can get 5% off your first order. At number 5, I have Sir Ocelot's Cave. So this is a 2-player only abstract strategy game that is quite unlike any other abstract strategy game that I've played, that I can remember anyway. So in this one, you have this rather large board, or a towel in this case, and on that towel you're going to have 3 different caves, which are essentially 3 different grids that do link with each other. And then at the start of the game, each of those grids are going to get populated with these gemstones, which come in a bunch of different points. So as little as 1 point, I think as high as say 8 points or 7 points. And of course you are trying to get as many points as you can by the time the game ends. And the way you do that is by either placing one of your item tokens on the kind of edge of those grids. And what you're trying to do is you are trying to get 3 different items hitting these gemstones from 3 different directions. And if you do that, then you're going to claim that gemstone for yourself, or even multiple gemstones in a single placement, and then add them to your score supply. But the twist in this game is that once you place something on the board, these pieces that you're placing are not in your colour. So the moment you place it down, it is eligible to be used by the other player. So sometimes, or in fact constantly, you are kind of weighing up that opportunity cost. Yes, I'm placing it here, I'm going to get this and this, but I'm giving my opponent this and this. So it's all about trying to get that net gain and not kind of lay a huge opportunity at the feet of your opponent. Now the game comes with this additional rule that you can use, well, you need to use, when you deploy your little companion onto the grid. And unlike your normal items that go on the edge of the grid, your companion goes bang on in the middle of those grids, or wherever you like, on an actual space. And that is essentially a wild item. So you're trying to place it as optimally as you can to get as many combos and score as many gems as you can from that piece. And then later in the game, you can spend an action to move it to the next cave along, but you can never go back on yourself. So you kind of want to mop up this area before you move on, but you don't want to wait too long before all the good opportunities go. So it does have a nice cadence to this game, a nice pacing, where you're thinking, yeah, I've kind of taken all the best things here. I think it's time for me to start focusing my attention elsewhere. Now, gameplay-wise, I think it's very interesting. I think there's a lot to weigh up here. If you like your abstract strategy games, this is a real cerebral head-to-head game. Being very careful at what you play and being careful about the opportunities you give your opponent. But it is very busy. I will say that's probably the biggest downfall of the game, is that even by looking at it, there's a ton of gems, tons of different lines, different directions, tons of items. And of course, because of that scoring mechanism where you need to have a gem being hit by 3 different items from 3 different locations or directions, then you are constantly reassessing and reanalyzing the board state, which can feel like work at times. It's not really like you can just look at this game at a glance and see, well, I need to be doing this. It's not intuitive in that nature. Yeah, the rules are feather light, but you are constantly racking your brain, matrix, using this matrix to work out how things are going to go and so on. Because obviously more and more tokens are getting placed at each round, you have to constantly reassess that. So if you do leave the game feeling like you've worked for your points, but again, I do love that interaction of the pieces being utilised by both players. And of course, pacing yourself as well, because you do have a limited supply of these tokens, and you want to be making sure that you leave yourself with options and not use all of the tokens here and save some for later. Yeah, the juicy stuff is here, but there's still opportunities here. The grid's bigger, and also there's like different sets you can collect and so on. So again, a nice game, I think hampered by the busyness of the board. Unfortunately, I don't think there's any way to get around that. I think the very nature of the game requires all this stuff. So I think you're going to have to swallow that if you are going to play this one. But I think a certain kind of player is going to get a lot from this one. I think a lot of these more casual gamers who want to just maybe react tactically or just play with a more chilled feel aren't really going to gel with this one, because it does require that extra mental investment to get the most from it. So that is Sir Ocelot's Cave at number 5. At number 4, I have Up or Down. So this is a new filler card game by the great Michael Kiesling and Wolfgang Kramer. And in this one, score-wise, you are trying to build columns of cards in either ascending or descending order. And the number of cards in that column will be multiplied by the most frequent colour that appears in that column. So for example, if I had 10 cards in that column and I had 4 blue cards, that'd be 10 times 4 for 40 points. And you're going to do that for all 3 of the columns of cards that you've done. But of course, as soon as you commit to either ascending or descending, then you have to stay to that, because you cannot break that pattern anymore, and you cannot slip cards in between previously placed cards. If you ever do break that, you're going to have to start a new one and discard one of your existing columns. But the way you actually gain the cards in the first place is you're going to be playing cards from your hand into this kind of ring of ascending cards in the middle of the table, which you and all your opponents are going to be using, and you're going to be placing the card in between a card of either higher or lower value. So for example, if I had the 17 in my hand and there was a 15 and a 20 on the table, I put it in between that 15 and 20, and then I can either pick up the 15 or 20 and add it into my score pile, and then repopulate my hand with one from a draw pile. And as you can imagine, you can try and think ahead and play with cards that you intend to pick up later and try and build the runs that way. And I do like the kind of general self-balancing thing here, because normally the values of numbers will stay within certain parameters, because of course you are playing them in numerical order on that ring of cards. So there's normally some rough ballpark in how these cards are going to come out. But of course, one mistake and you're going to have to discard the whole run of cards and start again. So, I tend to like these styles of games where you are organising things. This one definitely has a direct comparison to a game like Ohanami, a game that I've highly touted over the years. Lovely little drafting game where you're doing the same thing, building cards in ascending or descending order. The scoring works slightly different here, but the concept of this is the same. Now, I think maybe this game maybe lacks a little bit of elegance as compared to a game like Ohanami, but I do like some of the other things you can consider. Again, planning ahead with the cards that you're playing rather than just doing a closed draft. And they're nice kind of comparison games. Now, long term, I'm not sure if I will require both. I think this one might slightly lose out to Ohanami, again, because it's just a little bit more of a sophisticated game. But I do like the tension of this one. And again, that game arc of trying to get through the whole game without breaking that pattern can be very difficult. And of course, it's very heart-wrenching when it gets right to the end. You're forced to take a card and you cannot place it on your columns. You have to get rid of all those cards you've just played. Yeah, I think you get compensated for them, but of course, nowhere near in comparison to what you would have done if you kept that column of cards. So, really nice filler game. Maybe slightly longer than it needs to be, but there is a short kind of abridged version you can play with official rules. But yeah, I mean, it's very nice. I'll play this one again for sure. But again, long term, it might just miss out to Ohanami because it is so similar. So that is Up or Down at number 4. At number 3, I have Money. So this is a direct reprint of a Reiner Knizia game of the same name. And this is Knizia really doing what Knizia does best. So it has a set collection and also bidding mechanisms, which are two things synonymous with the Doctor. And this one, you're going to have 2 piles of cards in the centre of the table. And each player is going to have a hand of cards themselves. And they are going to be using these cards to bid to claim other cards. But the twist on this game is that your currency is actually also what you are trying to collect. And the way the game works is that each player is going to choose a number of these cards in their hand, place them face down, and then once everybody's selected, they're going to reveal them. Whoever's bid the highest is going to either swap their cards with one pile of the middle display, or even swap their cards with another player's played bid, or they can just pick it back up into their hand. And as you can imagine, as these cards are being swapped, then what I've just bid with might be what my opponent ends up taking when it comes to him claiming his cards. So I really love that kind of exchange market system that goes on here, and it's all these currencies are constantly being chopped and changed and swapped between all the players, and are formulating those sets in people's hands. And being careful what you bid with, because all your best bidding material might be what you're trying to collect. So sometimes you might take that risk of bidding with a high valued card with the intention of winning it back later to add it to your set. And the scoring system, as you'd expect with Knizia, is pretty interesting here, because you are trying to reach certain thresholds in this money before you even score anything. So I believe if you reach at least 100's worth of currency, then you'll score those points you get, but minus 100. So you are really have to invest heavily in these sets before they'll start paying out. But I think as soon as you hit 200, then you'll score all the points. So you do really need to be going all in on a certain type, but of course the other players might be having the same idea, and those sets are limited, so there's not enough to go around. Now additionally, there is some incentive to collect the lower valued cards, because they do score sets too. So there's kind of a sub-strategy you need to focus on. Now the game is super fast, you're talking about 20 minutes to play this one. Nice bright cards with cool artwork on them, and I just love the player interaction, that idea of your currency being the prize, and that exchange and flow of currency throughout the game. So lovely game. I've not had a chance to play the original. I don't think there's any differences between the rules, but it's nice to see these old games being rejuvenated, because they still hold up remarkably well. And this is the kind of game that will stay in my collection, because it scales well, you can play it with anybody, it takes no time at all to play, and it's unique. Despite Knizia making so many different bidding and set collection games, this one I think feels distinct for those reasons I've explained. So that is Money, a very welcome addition to my collection at number 3. At number 2, I have Ruins. So this is a card shedding game with a unique identity, because if you're familiar with the designer, John Declare, he is known for this mechanism where all your cards come in sleeves, and as the game progresses, you are slipping in these kind of plastic sheets to bolster the stats of these cards. And this game does that, but with a more traditional shedding game. So normally the games he makes are a bit more kind of deck buildery. This one, again, much more of a traditional card game, but utilising that deck or that card improvement mechanism. Now, the card shedding part of this game is as simple as it gets, where the first player is going to play a number of cards, of the same number, so I could play maybe 1/8 or 3/8 or something, and then in player order you either have to match or improve the value of those cards. So the next player could maybe also play for 3/8, and then the player after could maybe play 3/9, and so on. Now, the twist comes from improving these cards, because the cards you start with are pretty much all over the place, but you can spend these currencies by flipping them over and buying cards from this central display and slipping them into your deck or into your card sleeves. And these will do things such as increasing the value. So maybe you can have a 3 with a +5 on it, and all of a sudden it becomes an 8. Or it will count as 2 cards of the same number, or maybe a wild number. Maybe some of them will let you flip your currency things back over so you can spend more and improve your cards further. But you really do have to rely on those sleeves in order to stay in the round and keep playing. But furthermore, at the end of the round, all the cards that have been boosted and improved upon will get reshuffled and redistributed to the other players. So sometimes you can heavily invest in a card and it will go to another player next round, but you do have a bit of an insurance policy, as I think you have 3 opportunities, it might be 2, I can't quite remember, of reserving one of those cards. So you could put your personal sleeve in there to say, this card's mine, it's always going to come back to me, and you are not going to get your hands on it. So I love that. I think it's an absolutely really cool little system, where again the whole, well, not only your cards get better, the whole game gets better and boosted as it progresses. The scoring system is fairly interesting as well, because you get points based on if you kind of drop out first or second climbing this track. And then if you're in the kind of winning zone and you win again, then you will win the game. So you do have this kind of way to fast forward the victory if you win at the right time, rather than just winning at points by the end of a fixed amount of rounds, which is a secondary scoring mechanism, but it's nice that you have that kind of sudden death thing going on at the same time. So that's pretty much what this game entails. It's pretty straightforward, but again, I love that idea of constantly improving and boosting the cards, having tons of powers on them, and you get these kind of super cards that can get you out of any situation. And it just has a great kind of forward progression and like crescendo of the game as people just keep playing more and more cards down and staying in longer and longer. So I've covered a lot of card shedding games on the channel recently. This is up there with the best of them. And again, it feels unique because you are improving your cards physically by slipping those things in as the game goes on, and I love that little twist. So yeah, highly recommend this one if you like your card shedders. The only thing I'd suggest, or the only kind of small nitpick, is that the setup and the teardown can be a bit longer, because of course you need to pull out all the things you've invested and make sure that it's fresh again for the next game. It's not like you can just shove it all back in the box and just play again from scratch next time. You do have to put things back in their relevant piles. But that's a very small sacrifice I'm willing to make for such a great shedding game. So that is Ruins at number 2. And finally, at number 1, I have Duel for Cardia. This is a 2-player only tug-of-war simultaneous card selection game, as you are trying to beat your opponent to gain 5 of the signet rings, i.e. to win 5 duels before they do. Now, the game comes with 2 decks of cards, so you have the value 1 cards and the value 2 cards, and you can either play with either deck, or you can even mix and match them for some more variability. But you and your opponent will start the game on level footing. You will have the exact same deck of cards, but you will have a hand of cards drawn randomly from that deck. So you might not have access to the same cards immediately, but the deck-wise, they are exact same strength. Now, the way the game works is as easy as it gets, where you and your opponent will both choose a card and you will blindly reveal them. So, you both selected it, you'll reveal them at the same time. Now, whoever has played the highest valued card will get the signet ring and win the duel, but whoever has lost the duel will activate the power of that card. So think of something like Raptor, where sometimes you might want to deliberately lose the round so that you can exploit the power on that card. And this is where this game really shines, because I've played a lot of games like this, simultaneous selection games. This one, the kind of interaction and synergies and blending of the different powers is quite mind-blowing for such a small deck of cards. And the powers can be things as simple as, well, this duel doesn't count, so maybe that's a way to trap your opponent to play their highest valued card, which would normally bank a win, but force to discard it. Or it can be to tinker with existing duels by placing these modifiers which might swap the power or the placement of those signet rings. Maybe it will be to pick a card back up. Maybe it will be to win the duel instantly or win the game instantly if you play a lower valued. And there's even little things you can do where previously played cards can reduce the value of the next card, meaning that will make it more likely that you'll activate the power of that card. There really is a ton of different ways these cards can resolve, and I love the way that, if you're winning the duel, that's one power that you're not going to get, but it is one more step towards victory. So there's this perfect kind of trade-off really, where you need to know when to step back, when you're in the position of power, when to go for the kill, and of course when to play those cards best. And this game will kind of unravel and become richer the more you know those cards and the more you know your opponent, because the mind games will come into play. You know the cards that they could potentially have in their hand, and you know what you do not want them to play. Of course you do not want them to win that instant thing. You might want to drop down even further in value and trap the card that way, but of course they're getting the signet ring. So constant trade-offs here. This is probably the strongest example of a simultaneous reveal game that I've played. I love how easy these cards are to resolve, but they're also clever and perfectly and intricately balanced, and just tons of replayability because, again, that swapping of the two different decks as well. So this game, I cannot praise it enough. I mean, if you like games like Citadels, if you like games like Valbara, Libertalia, where you have these kind of numerical based powers, this game is way more streamlined than those games, but even better than those games. And that's no slight on those games at all, because I think they're very good designs. But this one seems to just do it perfectly. And yes, you are going to be capped at only playing at 2 players, but that real mind game things come into play here. And it feels like, I don't know, it's like intense, but because it's so fast and quickly resolved, it doesn't feel like a negative style of intensity. It feels more like, oh, let's resolve this, and maybe if it goes wrong, we'll just play again, play best 2 out of 3, because these games can only take, 5-10 minutes. It could take a bit longer, but normally it's about 10-15 minutes to play. And the amount of game you're getting here in such a small box, in such a short time frame, to me, is outstanding. So cannot praise this game enough. I mean, this is going to be, easily going to be a top 10 of the year for me. One of the best 2-player games I've played in multiple years. It's just absolutely incredible. If you like your clever little card games that are portable, are going to reward repeated plays. They're not going to take up much space on your shelf. Very thinky, genius design. Again, this is exactly what I want in my collection. It's just going to be an evergreen for me, and I cannot wait to play it more and to see those extra combos that you can really exploit in this game. So I'm not going to harp on anymore. Again, if you like the style of games that I do, I promise you will like this one. It is a work of art. So that is Duel for Cardia at number 1. So there we go, that concludes the video. Hopefully you have enjoyed it and taken a recommendation or two. If you have, please be sure to hit like and subscribe to the channel, and check out my other content too. But for everybody else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye bye.